Hey, how's it going? And today we are taking a look at how to make a macro, what a macro is, and when you may want to use one. Right now, I'm just in a blank third-person template. And if we jump into the Unreal documentation real fast, I'm in this section called Blueprint Best Practices, and it's probably a good idea to go through and read all this. There's a section in here called Functions versus Macros, and it says basically functions and macros accomplish the same goal externally. They have an input, a throughput, and an output, but they accomplish it in two different ways. They have a lot of similarities, they're reusable, they allow for local variables, and both are awesome ways to reuse your code. And one of the things it talks about here is that one of the biggest differences between a function and a macro is that you can place latent nodes or time related nodes in a macro but not in a function. And then down here on the very bottom it says a good rule of thumb might be to use a macro if there's a quick bit of functionality that you want to reuse everywhere. So with that said, we're just here in, like I said, a blank project template. And all we're going to do is create a macro that subtracts 1 from a value and prints it on the screen. So what I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to go into the third person blueprint, and it's right here. And what we're going to do is, you'll notice here on the left side that there's functions and macros, and so we can build them right here. They make it very easy. The one thing we're going to need is an integer value. So I already have one in here, but I'll just go ahead and delete that. So I'm going to go ahead and recreate that so you can see what I'm doing here. And let's just call this time value because that's what got me started on this whole thing. And we'll compile and save this. I saw a tutorial and they were using a macro in it. It kind of threw me off my game a little bit because I don't use macros that much. So I wanted to kind of get refreshed on what a macro is and how to make one. Okay, so we have this variable created, and then what we'll do is come here and just click this plus sign to make a macro. And I'm just going to call this subtract 1. Or I guess I already have that, so I'll call it subtract minus 1. You'll see right away that you have an input and an output. So we'll click on the input first. And essentially we're building from scratch. I mean, we're going to put the exec pins in and everything. So we'll click that plus sign there, and I'm going to call this exec out. And you'll see we have an option for an exec pin right there. Then we'll hit this plus sign again, and we're just going to call this value because this is going to be our reference value here. And it's an integer type, so we'll click that. And we're good there. Now with the output selected, I'm going to come over here and click on the plus sign here, and we're going to write in exec in, and that's going to be an exec pin. And then we're going to click one more time and we'll call this result, and this is going to be an integer. So there we have our input and our output. And there's just 2 more nodes that we need. So the first one is I'm going to right click and I'm going to search for something called manipulate integer internal. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to hook up these exec pins here like that. And that one goes in there, and this one goes in here. And then what we're going to have to do is add a subtract node. So I'm going to pull off of here and go subtract. And it's going to be 1. So I'll put the value 1 in there, and I'll hook this in there like that. Now if you wanted to create something like this for adding or multiplying, you would add your node in here. Just change it to what you want. Here it's subtraction, but it could be adding, dividing, or multiplying. And we'll just compile and save that. One more thing before we go is if I click here, you'll notice we have this compact node title. So since one of the advantages of doing this is to preserve real estate, we can just give it like double minuses as its name. So it doesn't take up any more real estate than it absolutely has to. So now if I go into the Blueprint third person, well, I'm still in the Blueprint third person. What we'll do is just go into the event graph here now. And so to bring this home, we're just going to create a keyboard event. We'll type in keyboard, and we'll just go with the number 1 here. And here is our macro, and I'm just going to pull it onto the scene like that. And see how compact that is? And now we know exactly what it's going to do. It's going to subtract 1. So it needs a time value to subtract from, so we're going to drag this onto the scene. And we'll just plug this into here like that. Put this in there like that. And then we're going to go and get 2 more nodes. We're just going to get an append node for a string here. And we're going to put this into here. And then here, we're just going to type in the current value is colon like that. Right click and get a print string. Click right there. And then we'll just plug this into there like that. And this into here like that. And that's the whole thing. It's not very complicated. But if we were to do this in a normal way, it could involve up to 3 nodes. And now we can reuse this, subtract 1, wherever we are in our game and stuff like that. So anyway, I'll just hit play. And if I just hit 1 in the upper left corner, you'll see the current value is 29, 28, 27, 26, 25. And it just keeps subtracting 1. So it's pretty nifty. It's a pretty nifty function. And so you'd want to use a macro if there's, like they said, a bit of functionality that you want to be reusing everywhere. And it's especially helpful if there's a time function or node that you want to use as well. So anyway, take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.